Captain Saracen stared at the massive alien fleet through the viewport of the UES Defiance, trying her best not to burst into laughter. 300 imposing warships hung in space before them, each one gleaming with polished metal and bristling with what looked like ceremonial decorations. The ships were beautiful, she had to admit, but they looked more like floating cathedrals than instruments of war. "Captain," Lieutenant Rodriguez called from the communications station, his voice barely containing his amusement.
"They're hailing us again. Same message as before. Put them through, Rodriguez. Let's see what the Galactic Empire wants this time."
The main screen flickered to life, revealing a tall, elegant alien with purple skin and what appeared to be golden robes.
Its four eyes blinked in sequence as it spoke in a melodious voice that the universal translator rendered in perfect English.
"Primitive species of the third planet," the alien intoned with obvious condescension, "I am High Admiral Zephyrus of the Galactic Empire's First Fleet. You will surrender your crude vessels immediately and prepare to be incorporated into our glorious civilization.
Resistance is futile against our superior technology." Sarah had to bite her lip to keep from grinning.
She glanced around the bridge at her crew, all of whom were struggling with the same problem.
Chief Engineer Martinez was actually covering his mouth with his hand, shoulders shaking slightly.
"This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Defiance," she replied formally. "High Admiral, we appreciate your generous offer, but we'll have to decline.
We're quite happy with our current arrangement."
The alien's four eyes widened in what appeared to be shock.
"You dare refuse the benevolent guidance of the Empire?
Your species clearly lacks the wisdom to recognize your betters.
Perhaps a demonstration of our power will help you understand your position." One of the massive alien ships began to move forward, weapons ports opening along its hull.
Sarah watched with professional interest as energy began to build up in what were obviously beam weapons. The design was actually quite impressive from an artistic standpoint.
"Commander Thompson," she said calmly to her tactical officer, "what's your assessment of their weapons?"
Thompson, a veteran of the Mars colony wars, studied his console with the same expression he might use to examine a child's toy.
"Captain, those appear to be focused plasma beams.
Probably about the same power output as our old Mark III naval guns from 50 years ago.
The energy buildup time is, well, it's quite slow, ma'am." "How slow?"
"About 12 seconds for a full charge, Captain.
Our point defense systems could probably handle the entire salvo without breaking a sweat." Sarah nodded, then addressed the alien admiral again. "High Admiral Zephyrus, before you fire, I should probably mention something. You might want to reconsider your approach."
The alien's response was to gesture dramatically, and the forward ship fired. A brilliant beam of purple energy lanced toward the Defiance, striking their forward shields. The ship barely shuddered. "Direct hit, Captain," Thompson reported. "Shields down to 98%. The bridge fell silent for a moment.
Then, despite their best efforts, someone started snickering. It might have been Rodriguez. Within seconds, the entire bridge crew was struggling not to laugh out loud.
"High Admiral," Sarah said, her voice carefully controlled, "that was impressive."
"Really?
Very pretty light show." On the screen, Zephyrus looked confused. "Your vessel should have been destroyed.
Our plasma cannons are the pinnacle of galactic technology."
"I'm sure they are," Sarah replied diplomatically.
"Chief Martinez, could you give our guests a brief overview of our defensive capabilities?" Martinez cleared his throat, still grinning.
"Well, Captain, our shields are rated for impacts up to approximately 100 times more powerful than what we just experienced. And that's just our standard defensive grid, not our combat configuration." The alien's four eyes began blinking rapidly, which their cultural database suggested might indicate extreme confusion or distress. "Perhaps," Sarah continued, "we should have a proper conversation before this goes any further.
Would you be willing to come aboard our ship for discussions? We can guarantee your safety." "Come aboard your primitive vessel?" Zephyrus sputtered. "The very suggestion is insulting. With respect, High Admiral, I think there might be some misconceptions here. About who exactly is primitive?"
As if to emphasize her point, 3 more human ships materialized out of nowhere as their stealth systems disengaged. The alien fleet immediately went into what appeared to be panic mode, with ships frantically repositioning and weapons swiveling in all directions.
"Where did they come from?" Zephyrus demanded.
"Oh, those are just a few of our escort vessels," Sarah said casually.
We have a few more around if needed. The UES Vengeance, UES Thunder, and UES Retribution. Nothing too fancy, just standard exploration cruisers.
What she didn't mention was that each of those standard cruisers carried enough firepower to level a continent and had shields that could withstand direct hits from stellar-class weapons. But there was no need to be rude about it. Commander Thompson leaned over to whisper in her ear.
Captain, I'm reading some interesting energy signatures from their fleet.
I think they're charging up for a coordinated attack.
All ships? Sarah asked quietly. Looks like about 50 of them, ma'am. Quite a light show coming our way. Sarah sighed. These aliens were really going to make this difficult, weren't they?
High Admiral Zephyrus, she said, her tone becoming more serious, I strongly advise against whatever you're planning.
We really don't want any unnecessary conflict here.
You will learn the price of defying the Empire, the alien declared, and, suddenly, 50 ships opened fire simultaneously. The space around the Defiance lit up like a rainbow as beams of various colors and intensities converged on the human ships.
The display was actually quite beautiful, Sarah had to admit. It looked like a fireworks show.
All ships report minimal shield impact, Thompson announced.
We're down to about 90% across the fleet. The bridge crew wasn't even trying to hide their amusement anymore. Someone in the back was actually chuckling audibly. You know what?
Sarah said, standing up from her command chair.
I think it's time we showed our guests what human technology actually looks like. Mr. Thompson, target one of their smaller vessels. Disable only, minimum power setting. Aye, Captain.
Firing one pulse torpedo, minimum yield.
A small, almost invisible projectile streaked from the Defiance toward one of the alien ships.
It struck with barely a flash, and the target vessel simply stopped. No explosion, no debris, just a complete shutdown of all systems.
What did you do to our ship?
Zephyrus demanded, his four eyes now blinking so rapidly they looked like strobe lights.
We disabled its power systems, Sarah explained patiently.
Your crew is fine, life support is still functioning, but the ship won't move or fire until we reverse the effect.
Consider it a demonstration. Impossible. No weapon can selectively disable Imperial technology.
High Admiral, I think we need to have a serious conversation about what constitutes advanced technology. Your ships are beautiful, don't get me wrong, but they're running on principles that humanity figured out about 2 centuries ago. The alien's mouth opened and closed several times without sound.
Finally, he managed to speak. 2 centuries?
But we have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. We are the most advanced civilization in known space.
Sarah couldn't help herself anymore and smiled broadly.
High Admiral, I hate to break it to you, but I don't think you've met very many advanced civilizations.
Would you like to know what humanity has been up to for the past few hundred years?
She gestured to Rodriguez, who brought up a holographic display showing the local area of space. Hundreds of small dots appeared, representing human colonies, research stations, and exploration vessels.
These are just our local operations, Sarah explained. We've been exploring this region for about 50 years now.
We've cataloged most of the inhabited systems, made contact with dozens of species, and established trade relationships with quite a few civilizations. The display zoomed out, showing thousands more dots spread across a much larger area.
This is our overall sphere of influence. About 1,200 inhabited systems under human protection or alliance.
Zephyrus stared at the display as if it were showing him the end of the world. Which, from his perspective, it probably was. But, you're primitives.
You've only just achieved interstellar flight. Actually, Sarah said gently, we've had faster-than-light travel for over 300 years. We've been exploring the galaxy for quite some time. I think the real question is, how exactly did your empire manage to avoid noticing an expanding human civilization for so long? The alien admiral's response was a long moment of stunned silence.
Finally, one of his subordinates appeared on the screen and whispered something urgent in his ear.
Zephyrus's already pale purple skin seemed to lose even more color.
Captain Chen, he said slowly, my tactical officer informs me that your ships are not showing up on any of our sensors. Even now, looking directly at you, our instruments detect only empty space.
Oh, that's just basic stealth technology, Sarah replied. We've been trying to avoid scaring anyone unnecessarily. Most civilizations get a bit nervous when they can't see our ships. And your weapons. Standard defensive armaments for exploration vessels, Sarah confirmed. We don't actually carry any serious weaponry on these ships. These are science vessels.
Commander Thompson coughed politely.
Captain, should I mention the relativistic kill vehicles we have in storage? Not right now, Thompson. I think the High Admiral has enough to process already.
Indeed, Zephyrus appeared to be having some kind of breakdown. His four eyes were blinking in completely random patterns now, and he was making small whimpering sounds.
High Admiral, Sarah said kindly, would you like to send a small delegation over to our ship?
I think it might help if you could see our technology firsthand.
We're happy to share some basic information about human civilization. You would do that? After we attacked you? Sarah shrugged. You didn't really attack us so much as give us a light show. No harm done.
Besides, we prefer making friends to making enemies.
But, we are the Galactic Empire. We conquer species. We do not make friends.
Well, Sarah said with a grin, maybe it's time you tried something new. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent beeping from the communications console. Captain, Rodriguez called out, we're receiving a transmission from Earth Command.
Priority Alpha.
Put it through, Sarah ordered. The screen split to show Admiral Patricia Hayes, the commander of Earth's Exploration Division. She looked distinctly amused.
Captain Chen, I trust you're having an interesting first contact? You could say that, Admiral.
The Galactic Empire has been very educational.
I imagine so. Captain, I'm transmitting updated cultural protocols for Imperial contact.
It seems they've been trying to contact Earth directly, but their messages keep getting filtered out by our spam detection systems. Sarah looked at Zephyrus, whose four eyes had now stopped blinking entirely. He appeared to be in some kind of shock.
Admiral, I think they're having some difficulty adjusting to the reality of human technology levels. Yes, that's fairly common.
The Empire has apparently been ruling over a collection of pre-industrial civilizations for quite some time. They seem to have convinced themselves that they represent the pinnacle of galactic achievement.
And now they've run into us. Exactly. Captain, I want you to extend full diplomatic courtesy to their delegation.
This could be an excellent opportunity to establish positive relations with a large galactic government, even if they are somewhat behind the times technologically.
Understood, Admiral.
We'll do our best to be gentle with them.
Admiral Hayes signed off, and Sarah turned her attention back to the traumatized alien commander. Hi Admiral Zephyrus, would you like to start over? Perhaps we could discuss this situation like civilized beings.
The alien took several deep breaths, then seemed to pull himself together with visible effort. Captain Chen, he said formally, I believe the Galactic Empire may have misunderstood the nature of your species.
Would it be possible to arrange a formal meeting to discuss mutual cooperation? Sarah smiled warmly. I think that would be an excellent idea. Welcome to human space, High Admiral. I think you're going to find this very interesting.
As she watched the alien fleet begin to stand down their weapons, Sarah couldn't help but chuckle. First contact with the Galactic Empire, and it had turned into the most amusing day she'd had in months. She had a feeling that humanity's relationship with the galaxy was about to become very interesting indeed. The real fun, she suspected, was just getting started. 3 hours later, Captain Sarah Chen stood in the main conference room of the UES Defiance, watching as High Admiral Zephyrus and his delegation tried to make sense of what they were seeing. The alien commander had brought 5 of his senior officers, and all 6 of them were staring at the holographic display showing Earth's solar system with expressions of complete bewilderment. This cannot be accurate, muttered Sub-Commander Vex, a shorter alien with green skin and 6 arms. The energy readings from your star system suggest industrial activity on a scale that should be impossible. Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the Defiance's chief science officer, smiled patiently as she manipulated the hologram.
Actually, this is just our home system. We've been engaged in large-scale stellar engineering for about 200 years now. Would you like to see the Dyson swarm around our sun?
The display zoomed in to show the intricate network of solar collectors, habitats, and industrial platforms that surrounded Earth's star.
The alien delegation made collective gasping sounds. You have harnessed the power of an entire star? Zephyrus whispered.
Well, about 30% of it so far, Dr. Warren replied casually.
We're planning to expand the swarm over the next few decades.
The energy requirements for our civilization are growing pretty rapidly. Communications Officer Rodriguez looked up from his station.
Captain, we're getting reports from other human ships in the area.
Seems like Imperial fleets have made contact with our colonies in 3 other star systems. All peaceful contacts so far, but the aliens seem to be having similar adjustment issues.
Sarah nodded. Any problems?
Not really. The colony ship Mayflower reported that the local Imperial commander fainted when they demonstrated their terraforming equipment.
And the research station at Proxima is apparently giving a full technological tour to an entire Imperial science division.
Subcommander Vex raised one of his 6 hands.
Excuse me, but did you say terraforming? As in, reshaping entire worlds? Standard procedure for colony establishment, Sarah replied.
We prefer to work with existing biospheres when possible, but sometimes you need to make adjustments.
Why, is that unusual in the Empire? Unusual? Zephyrus looked like he might faint again.
The ability to reshape worlds is considered divine power.
Only the ancient legends speak of such capabilities.
Dr. Warren brought up another display, this one showing before and after images of Mars.
This is our second planet.
We converted it from a barren world to a garden world about 150 years ago. Took about 30 years to complete the full atmospheric conversion. The silence from the alien delegation was so complete that Sarah could hear the gentle hum of the ship's engines. Finally, Fleet Admiral Kythera, an elegant alien with silver skin and elaborate head tendrils, spoke up.
Captain Chen, I must ask a direct question. What is humanity's true technological level? I'm not sure I understand the question, Sarah replied honestly.
In the Empire's classification system, Kythera explained, we measure civilizations by their achievements.
A level 1 civilization can harness planetary energy. Level 2 can harness stellar energy. Level 3 can harness galactic energy.
By these measures, the Empire achieved level 1 about 8,000 years ago and has been working toward level 2 ever since.
Dr. Warren and Sarah exchanged glances. Well, Dr. Warren said slowly, by that classification system, I suppose humanity would be approaching level 3.
The alien delegation sat in stunned silence for a full minute.
Approaching level 3? Zephyrus finally managed to croak.
We've established industrial operations in about 1,200 star systems, Sarah explained. Our long-term planning committees are working on projects that will involve harnessing energy from the galactic core. It's still theoretical at this point, but the preliminary engineering studies look promising.
Subcommander Vex was making small whimpering sounds. Perhaps, Sarah said gently, you could tell us about the Empire?
We're always interested in learning about other civilizations.
Fleet Admiral Kythera seemed to pull herself together with visible effort.
The Galactic Empire rules over approximately 3,000 star systems.
We have brought the benefits of civilization to over 50 primitive species.
That's impressive, Sarah said politely.
What kinds of benefits? We provide protection from hostile forces, teach basic technologies like metallurgy and agriculture, and guide primitive species toward enlightenment. Dr.
Warren looked puzzled.
Metallurgy?
But that's been standard knowledge for most species for thousands of years. Even pre-spaceflight civilizations typically develop metallurgy early in their technological development. Not the species we encounter, Kythera replied. Most are barely beyond the Stone Age when we find them. Sarah began to understand the problem.
Hi Admiral, when was the last time the Empire encountered a spacefaring civilization?
Zephyrus thought for a moment.
About 4,000 years ago.
The Vorthan Republic. They had achieved crude interstellar flight.
What happened to them?
They were incorporated into the Empire, of course. They were grateful for our guidance. Rodriguez looked up from his console.
Captain, I'm getting some interesting data from our anthropological database.
Cross-referencing Imperial territory with known spacefaring civilizations.
What have you found?
It looks like any species that developed advanced technology in Imperial space either disappeared or regressed to pre-industrial levels about 4,000 years ago.
There's a clear pattern.
The alien delegation was looking increasingly uncomfortable. Of course there is a pattern, Kythera said defensively. Primitive species require guidance. Without the Empire's protection, they often destroy themselves with their crude technologies.
Dr. Warren raised an eyebrow. Or they get conquered by a more advanced civilization and have their technology confiscated? The Empire does not confiscate technology. Zephyrus protested.
We simply regulate dangerous capabilities. Such as advanced metallurgy, energy weapons, faster-than-light communication, stellar navigation.
Sarah held up a hand. High Admiral, that's basically everything needed for a technological civilization.
Exactly. Such technologies are clearly too dangerous for primitive minds. The conference room fell silent again.
Sarah was beginning to understand why the Empire had been so shocked by humanity's capabilities.
They had spent millennia systematically suppressing any technological development among their subjects. Captain, Rodriguez called out, we're receiving another priority transmission from Earth Command.
Put it through.
Admiral Hayes appeared on the main screen, looking distinctly serious.
Captain Chen, we've been analyzing the data from your contact with the Empire. I'm afraid the situation is more complicated than we initially thought.
How so, Admiral?
We've identified the remains of at least 30 previously spacefaring civilizations in Imperial space.
All show signs of having been forcibly reverted to pre-industrial technology levels. The Empire appears to be practicing systematic technological suppression on a galactic scale.
The alien delegation was now looking actively distressed.
Furthermore, Admiral Hayes continued, we've detected what appear to be prison worlds throughout Imperial space. Populations of various species, all held at pre-industrial technology levels despite clear evidence of previous advancement.
Zephyrus stood up suddenly.
Those are protected worlds.
Species that proved unable to handle advanced technology responsibly. Protected from what? Sarah asked quietly.
From themselves. From the chaos and destruction that comes with uncontrolled technological development.
Admiral Hayes leaned forward on the screen.
High Admiral, our records indicate that these species were developing normally until Imperial contact.
After incorporation into the Empire, their technological capabilities were systematically destroyed. For their own good. Kithara insisted. Advanced technology leads to warfare, environmental destruction, social collapse. The Empire protects species from these dangers.
Dr. Warren pulled up another holographic display, this one showing human colony worlds.
High Admiral, does this look like chaos and destruction to you?
The display showed thriving cities, restored biospheres, and peaceful populations across dozens of worlds.
You're different, Vex muttered. Humanity is clearly exceptional. No, Sarah said firmly. We're not.
We're just a species that was allowed to develop naturally. What you call chaos and destruction is actually the normal process of technological and social growth.
Rodriguez looked up again. Captain, I'm getting reports from our other contact teams. The pattern is consistent across Imperial space. Hundreds of species held in technological stasis. Admiral Hayes nodded grimly.
Captain, we need to discuss the humanitarian implications of this situation. The Empire is essentially holding billions of sentient beings in technological slavery. The alien delegation was now huddled together, having what appeared to be a heated discussion in their native language.
Finally, Zephyrus turned back to the humans. You cannot understand, he said desperately. Without the Empire's guidance, these species would destroy themselves. We have seen it happen. Have you? Sarah asked. Or have you prevented it from happening by removing their ability to choose their own path? Choice leads to chaos. Choice leads to growth, Dr. Warren countered.
Technological development is how species learn to solve their problems and create better societies.
But what about warfare? Environmental destruction? Social collapse? Sarah smiled sadly.
High Admiral, every technological species goes through growing pains.
Humanity certainly did. We had wars, environmental problems, social upheaval.
But we learned from our mistakes and grew beyond them. And now you have the power to reshape worlds, Admiral Hayes added from the screen. Not to mention the wisdom to use that power responsibly. Zephyrus slumped in his chair.
But, if we release the protected species, if we allow them to develop freely, they'll probably make some mistakes at first, Sarah admitted. But they'll also create wonders you can't imagine. New art, new science, new ways of understanding the universe.
And some of them might develop technologies even more advanced than yours, Dr. Warren added.
They might become equals or even teachers instead of subjects.
The alien admiral's 4 eyes began blinking rapidly again.
But, then, what would be the purpose of the Empire?
Maybe, Sarah suggested gently, instead of ruling over primitive species, you could work with advanced civilizations as partners and allies. Rodriguez called out from his station. Captain, we're getting a massive data burst from the Empire's home fleet.
Looks like they're transmitting to all Imperial forces throughout the galaxy.
On cue, Zephyrus's personal communicator began chiming urgently. He activated it, and the image of another alien appeared, this one with elaborate robes and multiple heads.
Hi, Admiral Zephyrus. What is this report about human ships with impossible technology? The High Council demands an explanation.
Zephyrus looked at Sarah helplessly.
Supreme Chancellor, the situation is complicated. How complicated can it be?
You have 300 ships. Destroy these primitives and continue with your mission.
Sarah stepped into view of the communicator.
Supreme Chancellor, this is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earthship Defiance. I don't think your admiral has had a chance to brief you on the actual situation.
The Supreme Chancellor's multiple faces all focused on Sarah simultaneously. A human? How dare you address the Supreme Chancellor directly?
Because we're equals having a conversation, Sarah replied calmly.
Your admiral has learned some interesting things about human civilization.
Perhaps he should share them with you. What followed was one of the most uncomfortable conversations Sarah had ever witnessed. Zephyrus attempted to explain human technological capabilities to his superior, who became increasingly agitated with each revelation.
Stellar engineering? Terraforming? Multi-system civilization? The Chancellor's voices rose to a collective shriek. Impossible. Humans are primitives.
Our first contact report clearly indicated a single planet with crude chemical rockets. That report, Sarah said quietly, was filed about 300 years ago.
We've made some progress since then.
The transmission ended with the Supreme Chancellor apparently having some kind of breakdown, and Zephyrus looked at the humans with an expression of pure despair. Captain Chen, he said slowly, I believe the Empire is in very serious trouble.
Not necessarily, Sarah replied. But I think some major changes are going to be required.
As she looked at the alien delegation, Sarah realized that humanity had just accidentally destabilized a galactic empire.
The question now was what to do about it.
The universe, she suspected, was about to become a much more interesting place. 2 weeks later, Captain Sarah Chen found herself in the strangest diplomatic situation of her career. The UES Defiance was docked at Imperial Station Alpha, the Empire's largest military facility, while representatives from over 200 Imperial member species gathered for what the Empire was calling an emergency galactic assembly. The station itself was impressive in scale, nearly the size of a small moon, but Sarah's engineering team had already identified numerous design flaws and outdated technologies. Chief Martinez had actually started making a list of suggested improvements, though Sarah had told him to keep it to himself for now. Captain, Lieutenant Commander Park reported from the communications station, we're getting reports from human observation teams throughout Imperial space.
The situation is complicated. How complicated? Well, 17 imperial governors have declared independence from the central authority. 43 species are demanding immediate technological uplift.
And, at least 6 worlds have had complete social revolutions in the past week.
Sarah sighed. Any violence? Surprisingly little. Most of the uprisings seem to be remarkably peaceful.
The suppressed species are mainly demanding access to education and technology rather than revenge. Dr. Warren looked up from her analysis of imperial records.
That's actually not surprising. Most of these civilizations were artificially regressed, not naturally primitive.
They retain cultural memories of technological society. The conference room doors opened, and High Admiral Zephyrus entered, looking like he hadn't slept in days. His normally immaculate uniform was wrinkled, and his 4 eyes had a distinctly frazzled appearance.
Captain Chen, he said wearily, the Supreme Chancellor has requested an urgent meeting with human representatives. The situation is deteriorating rapidly. How can we help?
Zephyrus slumped into a chair.
To be honest, I'm not certain you can.
The Empire is essentially collapsing. Once word spread about human capabilities and our methods of governance, everything started falling apart.
What specifically is happening?
The protected species are refusing imperial guidance.
Our own citizens are questioning the legitimacy of imperial authority.
Several of our most advanced member worlds are demanding equal status with humanity.
And the High Council is in complete chaos.
Rodriguez called out from his station. Captain, incoming transmission from Admiral Hayes.
Put her through.
Admiral Hayes appeared on screen, looking grim but determined.
Captain, I have new orders from the Colonial Council. We're being asked to provide humanitarian assistance to Imperial member species.
What kind of assistance? Educational support, basic technology transfers, medical aid, and protection from Imperial forces that might attempt to maintain the old system by force.
Sarah raised an eyebrow. Are we talking about military protection?
If necessary. The Colonial Council has authorized the deployment of the Third Fleet to Imperial space.
They're taking a humanitarian intervention approach.
Zephyrus made a strangled sound.
The Third Fleet? How many ships?
About 1,200 vessels, Admiral Hayes replied casually. The alien admiral's response was to put his head in his hands and make quiet whimpering noises.
Admiral, Sarah said, what's our diplomatic position? Are we officially intervening in imperial affairs?
We're providing assistance to oppressed populations. The Empire is free to object, but, given their technological limitations, we're not particularly concerned about military opposition.
Dr. Warren looked thoughtful. Admiral, has the Science Division prepared any uplift packages for the Imperial species?
Dr. Martinez's team has been working on it. Basic industrial technology, medical knowledge, educational materials.
Nothing too advanced, just enough to help these civilizations regain their independence.
Zephyrus looked up from his hands. Captain, you must understand, if you provide advanced technology to our member species, the Empire will cease to exist. High Admiral, Sarah said gently, the Empire as it currently exists is based on technological suppression and cultural domination.
Maybe it's time to consider a different approach.
But what would replace it?
Before Sarah could answer, the conference room's communication system activated with an urgent chime.
Captain Chen, came Rodriguez's voice, we're receiving a priority transmission from the Imperial capital. It's the Supreme Chancellor, and he sounds distressed.
Put him through.
The main screen flickered to life, showing the multi-headed Chancellor in what appeared to be a state of complete panic. His ornate robes were disheveled, and several of his heads were talking at the same time.
Captain Chen. You must help us. Everything is falling apart. Supreme Chancellor, what exactly is the situation?
300 worlds have declared independence. The Vorthan Republic has reformed and is demanding reparations. The Kelleran systems are threatening to reveal imperial war crimes. And the protected species are openly rebelling.
Sarah exchanged glances with Zephyrus, who looked mortified.
Supreme Chancellor, she said diplomatically, perhaps this is an opportunity for the Empire to reconsider its relationship with member species.
Reconsider? Reconsider? We are facing the complete collapse of 10,000 years of civilization.
Dr. Warren leaned forward. With respect, Supreme Chancellor, what you're facing is the end of 10,000 years of oppression.
That's not the same thing as the collapse of civilization.
But, without imperial authority, these species will destroy themselves with advanced technology. No, Sarah said firmly, they won't. Most technological species are perfectly capable of managing their own development when given the chance.
But, you don't understand. The Empire has maintained galactic peace for millennia.
Rodriguez looked up from his console.
Captain, I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout Imperial space.
It looks like dozens of worlds are firing up industrial complexes that have been dormant for thousands of years.
The infrastructure was still there?
Dr. Warren asked, surprised.
Zephyrus nodded miserably. Imperial policy was to disable rather than destroy technological capabilities. We believed it was more humane.
So these civilizations could theoretically return to their original technological levels quite rapidly?
Within a few years, yes.
The knowledge was preserved in their cultural records and hidden archives.
Admiral Hayes smiled on screen. That's excellent news.
It means our uplift assistants can focus on helping them rebuild rather than starting from scratch. The Supreme Chancellor's multiple faces were now displaying what appeared to be collective terror.
But, what about the Empire? What about our people? What about our way of life? Sarah considered the question carefully. Supreme Chancellor, what if instead of ruling over primitive species, the Empire became a confederation of equal partners?
Your people have valuable knowledge and experience.
You could contribute to galactic civilization as equals rather than dominators.
Equals?
But we are superior. We have brought order to the galaxy.
You've brought stagnation, Dr. Warren corrected. Order without growth is just another form of death.
The transmission was interrupted by urgent alarms from the Imperial station.
Zephyrus jumped up and activated his own communicator.
Report. High Admiral, we're detecting massive spatial distortions throughout the sector. Multiple fleets are arriving simultaneously.
Sarah's own communicator activated.
Captain, this is the UES Vengeance.
We're reading the arrival of the Third Fleet as planned, but there are also dozens of other fleets appearing.
Non-human designs, unknown origin.
Dr. Warren quickly accessed the sensor data on her tablet.
Captain, these aren't unknown designs.
They're Imperial member species, but using technology that's centuries more advanced than current Imperial standards.
Zephyrus looked confused. That's impossible.
None of our member species possess advanced space technology.
High Admiral, Sarah said quietly, I think some of your member species have been hiding things from you.
The main viewer switched to show the space around the station. The Imperial fleet was dwarfed by a collection of ships in dozens of different designs, many of them clearly more advanced than anything the Empire possessed. Rodriguez was monitoring communications.
Captain, we're receiving transmissions from the new arrivals.
They're requesting permission to dock and participate in the Galactic Assembly.
Who are they?
The Vorthan Republic, the Kelleran Federation, the Zenth Alliance, and about 30 other governments I don't recognize from Imperial records. Zephyrus was staring at the display in shock.
But these civilizations don't exist anymore.
They were integrated into the Empire thousands of years ago.
Apparently not, Sarah said. It looks like quite a few species maintained independent technological development in secret.
The Supreme Chancellor's voice came over the communication system, now sounding completely defeated.
This cannot be happening. The Empire's records show complete integration of all member species. Dr. Warren was analyzing the incoming data. Captain, some of these civilizations are displaying technology that rivals our own.
The Vorthan ships are using some kind of advanced propulsion system I don't recognize.
Admiral Hayes appeared on screen again. Captain, we're receiving formal diplomatic requests from 17 different governments.
They're all asking for recognition as independent states and requesting human support for their membership in a new galactic confederation. Sarah looked at Zephyrus, who appeared to be in shock. High Admiral, it seems like the galaxy has been ready for change for a long time.
Your Empire's collapse may have been inevitable. But what will happen to us? To Imperial citizens? To our way of life?
That depends, Sarah said thoughtfully.
Are you willing to join a galactic community as equals? To contribute your knowledge and experience without dominating others?
Zephyrus was quiet for a long moment.
Finally, he spoke. Captain Chan, I must ask you something honestly. When humanity encountered civilizations less advanced than yours, what did you do? We offered them friendship, trade, and assistance if they wanted it.
We shared knowledge that could help them solve problems, but we let them choose their own path.
And they didn't destroy themselves with advanced technology? Some made mistakes, Sarah admitted.
But most thrived. Technological development combined with cultural exchange generally makes civilizations stronger, not weaker.
The alien admiral nodded slowly.
Perhaps the Empire has been wrong about many things. High Admiral, Admiral Hayes said from the screen, the Colonial Council has authorized me to extend an offer to Imperial citizens.
Any who wish to join the new Galactic Confederation as equal partners will be welcomed.
Your people have valuable experience in governance and administration.
And those who wish to maintain the old ways? Will be free to do so, Sarah said, as long as they don't attempt to force their views on others.
Zephyrus stood up straighter, and, for the first time in weeks, he looked hopeful. Captain Chen, Admiral Hayes, I would like to formally request that the Imperial Remnant be considered for membership in this new confederation.
As equals. Sarah smiled. I think that's an excellent starting point.
As alarms continued to sound throughout the station and dozens of previously hidden civilizations revealed themselves to the galaxy, Sarah realized that humanity had accidentally triggered the largest political transformation in galactic history. The Empire was dead, but something much better was being born in its place. 6 months after the collapse of the Galactic Empire, Captain Sarah Chen stood on the observation deck of the UES Harmony, watching the completion of the largest construction project in galactic history. The new Confederation station was taking shape in the neutral space between former Imperial territory and the human colonial zone, a massive structure designed to house representatives from over 400 different civilizations. It's quite something, isn't it? Came a familiar voice behind her. Sarah turned to see High Admiral Zephyrus approaching, though his title had changed significantly in recent months. He now served as the Coordination Director for the Transitional Government of former Imperial worlds, a position that basically made him responsible for helping dozens of species rebuild their civilizations.
How are the integration programs going? Sarah asked.
Zephyrus smiled, an expression that looked much more natural on him now than it had 6 months ago.
Better than anyone expected.
The Kelleran Federation has already reached pre-suppression technology levels, and the Vorthan Republic is actually ahead of where they were before Imperial contact.
That's remarkable progress.
It turns out that when you give intelligent species access to education and technology, they tend to do quite well for themselves, Zephyrus said with a note of wonder still in his voice.
Who would have thought? Sarah chuckled. Amazing how that works.
Dr. Warren joined them at the viewing window, carrying a data tablet filled with reports.
Captain, you'll want to see the latest statistics from the cultural exchange programs. Good news or bad news? Incredible news. We now have over 6,000 different technological innovations that resulted from interspecies collaboration.
The Zenth Alliance's approach to gravitic engineering combined with human manufacturing techniques has revolutionized space construction.
The Kelleran medical knowledge is helping us solve health problems we didn't even know we had. And the artistic collaborations.
She gestured toward the growing station.
Well, you can see for yourself.
Indeed, the Confederation station was unlike anything humanity had ever built. Where human designs tended toward functional efficiency, the station incorporated aesthetic elements from hundreds of different cultures. Flowing organic curves from aquatic species blended with crystalline structures favored by silicon-based lifeforms, while the docking bays showed the practical engineering preferences of species that had spent millennia perfecting space travel.
Any problems with the transition? Sarah asked.
Fewer than anticipated, Zephyrus replied. Some of the more conservative Imperial worlds are struggling with the concept of equality, but they're adapting.
The younger generation especially seems to embrace the new opportunities.
Rodriguez's voice came over the ship's communication system.
Captain Chen, incoming priority transmission from Earth.
Put it through here, Rodriguez. Admiral Hayes appeared on a nearby screen, looking pleased.
Captain, I have excellent news.
The Confederation Charter has been ratified by 347 member civilizations.
We officially have a new galactic government. What about the remaining worlds? Most are still deciding. A few former Imperial core worlds are maintaining independence, which is their right.
And about 20 species have requested time to rebuild before making a decision about membership.
Sarah nodded. That's reasonable. What about the former Supreme Chancellor? Retired to a private estate on the Imperial homeworld. He's apparently taken up gardening and writes poetry about the old days. Much happier, according to reports. Zephyrus laughed.
The irony is that he's finally found peace by giving up the responsibility of ruling the galaxy.
Speaking of irony, Dr. Warren said, you should see the latest reports from the archaeological teams.
We're finding evidence that several species the Empire claimed to have uplifted were actually more advanced than the Empire when first contact occurred.
How is that possible? Systematic historical revision. The Empire rewrote history to justify their actions.
They convinced themselves and everyone else that they were the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, when in reality they were somewhere in the middle.
Admiral Hayes leaned forward on the screen. Dr. Warren, what's your assessment of the Empire's actual technological level compared to other galactic civilizations?
Based on our analysis of recovered technologies and cultural records, I'd say the Empire was actually behind most of their member species in several key areas. They were good at military conquest and social control, but weak in fundamental sciences and engineering innovation.
Sarah found this fascinating. So they maintained control through suppression rather than genuine superiority? Exactly.
Remove the suppression, and their subjects quickly surpassed them.
Zephyrus looked thoughtful.
That explains why the Empire stagnated. We stopped innovating because we believed we were already at the pinnacle of achievement. It's a common trap for authoritarian systems, Dr. Warren observed. They prioritize control over growth, which eventually leads to technological and cultural stagnation. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent chime from the communications system.
Captain, Rodriguez called, we're receiving a transmission from the exploration ship UES Pioneer.
They've made contact with something unusual.
Put them through.
The screen switched to show Captain Maria Santos of the Pioneer, looking excited and slightly overwhelmed.
Sarah, you're not going to believe what we've found. We've encountered a civilization that makes humanity look primitive. Sarah raised an eyebrow. That's quite a statement, Maria. What are we talking about?
They call themselves the architects. They've been observing galactic development for over 1 million years. They've been waiting for the galaxy to mature enough for contact.
And they think we're ready now?
According to them, the formation of the Confederation represents the first time in galactic history that multiple species have chosen cooperation over domination.
They're impressed. Zephyrus stepped forward. Captain Santos, did they say anything about the Empire? Actually, yes. They described it as a necessary phase of development that had to collapse before true galactic civilization could emerge.
Apparently, this kind of authoritarian dominance followed by liberation and confederation is a common pattern in galactic evolution.
Dr. Warren looked intrigued. Do they want to join the Confederation? They're offering something better.
They want to sponsor our membership in the galactic community.
Which is
a confederation of confederations. Apparently, there are thousands of galactic civilizations like ours throughout the universe, all at roughly the same level of development. The architects serve as facilitators for intergalactic cooperation.
Sarah felt a familiar sense of wonder mixed with amusement. So we've gone from discovering a galactic empire to being invited to join a universal community?
It gets better, Captain Santos continued. They've offered to share some of their basic technologies as a welcome gift. Nothing too advanced, just enough to help us establish proper intergalactic communication and transportation.
Admiral Hayes was shaking her head in amazement.
Captain Santos, please tell the architects that humanity and the Confederation are honored by their offer.
We accept their invitation. Already done, Admiral. They're transmitting the basic technical specifications now.
Fair warning though, their idea of basic technology is going to revolutionize everything we thought we knew about physics. As Captain Santos signed off, Sarah looked out at the growing Confederation station with new perspective. What had started as a simple first contact with a galactic empire had evolved into membership in a universal community. You know, Zephyrus said quietly, 6 months ago I thought the empire represented the pinnacle of galactic achievement. Now I realize we were barely taking our first steps.
That's the beauty of growth, Sarah replied. There's always another level to discover. Dr. Warren was already deep in the technical specifications transmitted by the architects.
Captain, these technologies, they're going to change everything.
Intergalactic travel, universal translation, stellar engineering on scales we never imagined. Any risks?
The architects seem to have learned from experience.
All the technologies include built-in safeguards to prevent misuse. They're designed to enable cooperation rather than domination.
Rodriguez called out from the communication station. Captain, incoming transmission from Confederation Station.
They're requesting your presence for the inaugural assembly session. Sarah looked at her companions. Ready to help shape the future of galactic civilization? Zephyrus straightened his uniform. After spending my career enforcing stagnation, I'm looking forward to promoting growth.
As they made their way to the shuttle bay, Sarah reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this point. Humanity's first contact with the Galactic Empire had been intended as a simple diplomatic encounter. Instead, it had triggered the liberation of hundreds of civilizations, the formation of a new galactic confederation, and, now, membership in a universal community.
The shuttle ride to Confederation Station gave Sarah time to review the agenda for the inaugural assembly. Representatives from 400 civilizations would be working together to establish the basic principles of interspecies cooperation.
The first item on the agenda was the adoption of the Fundamental Rights Charter, guaranteeing every species the right to technological and cultural development. The second item was the establishment of the Galactic Development Fund, designed to help civilizations recover from various forms of oppression and reach their full potential. The third item made Sarah smile, the creation of an exploration initiative to seek out other galactic confederations and facilitate peaceful contact. As their shuttle docked with the station, Sarah looked back at the UES Harmony and the dozens of other ships representing the new confederation. Human vessels flew alongside Vorthan explorers, Kelleran medical ships, Zenth engineering platforms, and reformed Imperial cruisers.
The diversity was extraordinary. Captain Chen, Zephyrius said as they entered the station, "I want to thank you." "For what?" "For showing us that there was a better way."
The Empire ruled through fear and suppression for 10,000 years. In 6 months, the Confederation has accomplished more scientific and cultural advancement than the Empire achieved in its entire existence.
Sarah smiled. "Zephyrius, that's not because humanity is special. It's because freedom and cooperation are more powerful than control and domination. I'm beginning to understand that."
As they entered the Great Assembly Hall, Sarah was struck by the sight of hundreds of different species working together to build something unprecedented. Former Imperial subjects sat beside their former oppressors, working out the details of a truly egalitarian government.
Human diplomats collaborated with alien philosophers to establish principles of interspecies ethics. Scientists from dozens of worlds shared knowledge that would benefit everyone.
The opening ceremony was conducted in 17 different languages simultaneously, with translation provided by technology gifted by the architects. When the Confederation Charter was formally adopted, the celebration included musical traditions from across the galaxy. As the assembly began its work, Sarah found herself thinking about the future.
The Galactic Confederation was just the beginning.
With access to the universal community, there would be new challenges, new discoveries, and new opportunities for growth. Humanity had started the year as an unknown species exploring the edges of space. They were ending it as founding members of a galactic confederation and junior partners in a universal community.
Sarah Chen smiled as she watched the greatest diplomatic assembly in galactic history get to work.
The universe, it seemed, was full of surprises.
And humanity was just getting started. The real adventure was only beginning.